My name is Serafina, and at 35, I thought I had mastered the art of family gatherings, until my daughter's 5th birthday party became the day everything exploded. My mother stood in my kitchen smirking as she delivered her usual poison about my single status, when my brilliant little girl dropped a truth bomb that shattered 20 years of lies. What happened next exposed secrets so devastating that half my family stopped speaking to each other, and the other half finally learned what real loyalty meant. Hey everyone watching. Before we dive into this absolute roller coaster of family drama that changed everything I thought I knew about blood versus chosen family, drop a comment letting me know where you are tuning in from around the world. If stories about kids accidentally exposing family secrets and epic karma moments are your thing, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because this tale of maternal manipulation and unexpected justice is just getting started. Trust me, you will want to stick around for what my 5-year-old revealed about Grandma. That Saturday morning started like any other birthday preparation. Balloons hung from every surface of my modest 2-bedroom apartment, and the smell of chocolate cake filled the air. Maya, my precious daughter, bounced around in her unicorn dress, completely oblivious to the storm brewing in my chest every time I glanced at my phone. My mother had texted earlier, running late. Had to stop by Daniel's first. You know how important his promotion celebration is, Daniel. My golden child brother who could do no wrong even though he had not spoken to our father in 3 years over some business dispute. But somehow, Daniel's every achievement warranted a family parade, while my graduate degree in social work and 5 years of single motherhood rated nothing but criticism. When Mom finally arrived, she swept in wearing her signature patronizing smile and designer handbag. Serafina, darling, this place looks cozy. Her eyes scanned my carefully decorated living room with the kind of disdain usually reserved for roadkill. Hi, Grandma. Evelyn Maya launched herself at my mother, who stiffened slightly before offering a brief hug. Hello, little one. You are getting so tall. Mom's voice carried that performative warmth she used when others might be watching. Where is everyone else? Just us today, I replied, lighting the candles on Maya's cake. I wanted to keep it small and special. Mom's expression shifted into that familiar mask of concern mixed with judgment. Oh, sweetheart. Still no boyfriend to help you celebrate these important moments. She clicked her tongue disapprovingly. No wonder you are still single at 35. Men can sense desperation, you know. Maybe if you tried a little harder with your appearance, or perhaps moved somewhere more suitable for meeting quality people. The words hit like physical blows, each one carefully calculated to find the soft spots in my armor. Maya looked between us, her young face creasing with confusion at the sudden tension. Actually, Mom, I am perfectly content with our life. I managed my voice steady despite the familiar ache in my chest. Content. She laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. Darling, content is what we tell ourselves when we have given up on happiness. Look at your brother Daniel. Married to a lovely woman, beautiful home, successful career. That is what a fulfilling life looks like. I bit my tongue, remembering all the times Daniel had called me, crying about his marriage problems, his mounting debt, his constant anxiety about maintaining appearances. But pointing that out would only fuel another lecture about family loyalty and supporting each other. Maya tugged on my sleeve. Mommy, can we do cake now? Of course, baby. I forced brightness into my voice, determined not to let my mother's poison ruin Maya's special day. As we sang Happy Birthday, I watched my mother's face during the celebration. There was something different about her expression, a distraction that had nothing to do with Maya's joy. She kept checking her phone, typing quick responses with an urgency that seemed odd for a Saturday afternoon. After Maya blew out her candles and tore through her presents, Mom announced she needed to leave early. Another important engagement, I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Actually, yes. Your father and I have dinner plans with the Hendersons. You remember them, don't you? Their daughter just got engaged to a wonderful surgeon. 3rd engagement in the family this year. She gathered her purse with theatrical efficiency. It would be nice to have some good news to share about our family for once. Maya, still high on birthday sugar and excitement, bounced over to hug her grandmother goodbye. Bye, Grandma, thanks for coming to my party. You are welcome, dear. Mom's voice softened genuinely for the first time that day. You just remember to take care of your mother, all right? She needs all the help she can get. That is when Maya, in the beautifully innocent way only children can manage, tilted her head and said, "Is that why you give Mommy's daddy money every month? Because Mommy needs help?" The room went silent. Even the distant hum of traffic outside seemed to pause. My mother's face drained of color, and for the first time in my life I saw genuine fear in her eyes. What I whispered, my voice barely audible. Maya, oblivious to the bomb she had just detonated, continued cheerfully. Grandma Evelyn told me last time that she sends money to help take care of us because Daddy lives far away and cannot help. She said it was our special secret, but secrets are supposed to be fun, and this one makes Mommy sad sometimes. My legs went weak. I sank onto the couch, staring at my mother, who was now frantically shaking her head at Maya, her finger pressed to her lips in a desperate shushing motion. "Mom!" My voice came out strange, disconnected. "What is Maya talking about? She is confused, darling. Children misunderstand adult conversations." But her voice wavered and she would not meet my eyes. "Maya, sweetheart," I said carefully, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "When did Grandma tell you about sending money to Daddy last month when you were in the bathroom and she was on the phone?" She said, "Yes, I sent this month's payment to keep him quiet about Serafina, and then she saw me and said it was a secret about helping us." Maya's innocent explanation hit me like a freight train. My mother was paying my father. My father, who had supposedly abandoned us when I was 15. My father, who I had been told wanted nothing to do with his family. My father, who, according to my mother, had simply walked out one day and never looked back. "Mom." My voice was deadly quiet now. "Start talking, right now." But she was already backing toward the door, her face a mask of panic and calculation. "I really must go. We can discuss this later when you are less emotional." "No." I stood up, blocking her path. "We discuss this now." "Maya, honey, go play in your room for a few minutes." "But Mommy, now baby, please." After Maya reluctantly disappeared down the hallway, I turned back to my mother. 20 years. For 20 years you let me believe my father abandoned me. And you have been paying him to what? Stay away, Serafina. You do not understand the complexity of the situation. Then explain it to me. But even as I demanded answers, pieces were already falling into place with sickening clarity. The way conversations stopped when I entered rooms during my teenage years. My mother's insistence on handling all communication with extended family. The trust fund that had mysteriously appeared for my college education with no clear source. My father had not abandoned me at all. The silence stretched between us like a chasm, filled only by the distant sound of Maya playing in her room and my mother's increasingly frantic breathing. I watched her face cycle through emotions, panic, calculation, defiance, before settling on something that looked almost like relief. "Sit down," I said, my voice colder than I had ever heard it. "And tell me everything." Mom perched on the edge of my couch like a bird ready to flee. "Your father, he wanted custody when we divorced. He had this ridiculous idea that he could provide better stability." She laughed bitterly. "A man who traveled constantly for work, who barely knew how to cook a meal. What kind of environment would that have been for a teenage girl? So you paid him to disappear instead of fighting for joint custody like normal divorced parents. I protected you." Her voice rose before she caught herself glancing toward Maya's room. "Do you have any idea what your life would have been like shuttling between homes, dealing with his new girlfriends, watching him try to play father on weekends while I did all the real work?" I felt something cold and sharp crystallizing in my chest. "That was not your choice to make. I was your mother. It was absolutely my choice." She straightened, some of her usual imperious demeanor returning. "And I was right. Look how well you turned out. College educated, independent, a wonderful mother yourself." Independent, I almost choked on the word. "Mom, I have been supporting myself since I was 18. I work 60-hour weeks in social services, one of the most emotionally draining fields imaginable, because I thought I had to prove I was not like my deadbeat father. I have been in therapy for abandonment issues for years. I have struggled with relationships because I was convinced men always leave. Her face flickered with something that might have been guilt, but it passed quickly. You are being dramatic. Am I? Let me guess. The money you have been sending him has been increasing over the years. Inflation, maybe, or has he been asking for more to keep quiet about whatever really happened during the divorce? She said nothing, but her silence was answer enough. I walked to my kitchen window, looking out at the playground where other families were enjoying their Saturday afternoon. Normal families who told their children the truth about their lives, who did not build foundational relationships on elaborate lies. How much, I asked without turning around. Serafina, how much money have you paid my father over 20 years to stay out of my life? When she finally answered, her voice was small. It started at $500 a month. Now it is more. How much more? 2,000. I did the math quickly. Even at an average of $1,000 a month over 20 years, she had paid at least $240,000. $250,000 to keep my father away from me. Does Dad know? I meant her husband, my stepfather, who had raised me from 15 onwards. Does Richard know you have been paying my biological father hush money? Her sharp intake of breath told me everything. Oh my God, I turned to face her. Richard does not know. All these years he has believed the same story you told me, that my father simply did not want us. Richard is a good man, but he would not understand the complexity. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop with the excuses. You have been lying to everyone. To me, to Richard, to Maya. You have been stealing from your marriage to pay for your lies. I was protecting our family. No, you were protecting yourself. You were protecting your image as the perfect mother who saved her daughter from an unfit father. You were protecting your narrative. I walked to my laptop and opened it, my fingers moving with surprising steadiness as I began typing. What are you doing? Mom asked, alarm creeping back into her voice. I am finding my father. Her face went white. Serafina, please, think about what you are doing. After all these years, do you really want to disrupt everyone's lives? Maya is happy. Richard adores you. I have built a stable family for all of us. Built on lies, built on love. She stood moving toward me, with her hands outstretched in a pleading gesture. I love you. Everything I did was because I love you. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time saw past the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair to the woman underneath. A woman so terrified of losing control that she had manipulated everyone around her for decades. Love does not require lies, Mom. Love does not require paying people to disappear. Love trusts the people you claim to love with the truth. But what if I was right? What if your father really was not capable of being the parent you needed? Then that would have been something for me to discover and deal with proper support, not something for you to decide unilaterally. I turned back to my computer. I am 35 years old. I think I can handle meeting my own father. And if he disappoints you, if he turns out to be exactly what I said he was, I paused in my typing, considering her questions seriously. Then I will deal with that disappointment as an adult with all the information available to me. But Mom, do you know what the worst part of this is? She shook her head, tears finally forming in her eyes. The worst part is not that you lied about my father. The worst part is that you have spent 20 years watching me struggle with abandonment issues, watching me go to therapy, watching me sabotage relationships because I was convinced I was fundamentally unlovable. You watched me suffer from wounds that you created, and you said nothing. I wanted to tell you so many times, but you did not, because telling me would have meant admitting you were wrong. And you have never been wrong about anything, have you, Mom? She sank back onto the couch, looking older than I had ever seen her. What happens now? She whispered. I saved the search I had been conducting and closed my laptop. Now I find my father. I tell Richard the truth about where his money has been going, and I decide whether I want to continue having a relationship with someone who has been manipulating my entire family for decades. And Maya deserves to know her grandfather if he wants to know her. She deserves a family built on truth, not convenient lies. My mother sat in my living room for another 10 minutes, occasionally opening her mouth as if to speak, then closing it again. Finally, she gathered her purse and stood. "I hope you know what you are doing," she said. For the first time in 20 years, I replied, "I do." After my mother left, I sat in my living room, surrounded by birthday decorations and the debris of my shattered worldview. Maya's laughter echoed from her bedroom, where she was playing with her new toys, blissfully unaware that her innocent comment had just blown up our family's foundation. I picked up my phone and stared at it for a long moment before dialing Richard, my stepfather. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm and familiar. "Hey, sweetheart. How did Maya's party go?" The normalcy of his greeting almost broke me. Here was the man who had raised me from 15, who had walked me down the aisle at my wedding, who had held my hand through my divorce, and never once made me feel like a burden. "Richard, I need to tell you something. Can you come over?" The concern in his voice was immediate. "Of course. Is everything okay? Is Maya hurt?" "Maya is fine. But, Richard, I need you to sit down when you get here." An hour later, Richard sat across from me at my kitchen table, his face growing paler with each revelation. He was 62 now, his hair silver and his hands weathered from years of construction work, but his eyes still held the same gentle strength that had made me feel safe as a confused teenager. $2,000 a month, he repeated slowly. "For 20 years. I am so sorry, Richard. I had no idea." "If I had known, sweetheart." He reached across and took my hand. "This is not your fault. This is not even remotely your fault." His jaw tightened. "But your mother and I are going to have a very serious conversation." She said you would not understand the complexity of the situation. Richard's laugh was hollow. "The complexity, right." He rubbed his temples. "Do you know how many times I suggested we try to find your father? How many times I said maybe you should know where he was just in case you ever wanted to reach out?" I shook my head. "Every year on your birthday. Every Father's Day when I would catch you looking sad. Every time you went through something difficult, and I thought maybe having another supportive adult in your life could help." His voice grew bitter. "And every time Evelyn would get this look on her face and say something about protecting you from disappointment, about how some wounds were better left alone. You could have looked for him yourself. I thought about it. But I respected what I thought were your mother's wishes. I respected what I thought was her, protecting you from someone who had genuinely abandoned you." He stood and began pacing my small kitchen. $48,000 a year, Serafina. Do you know what we could have done with that money? The trips we could have taken, the college fund we could have built for Maya, the renovations we put off because money was tight. I watched this man I loved process the betrayal and my heart broke for him almost as much as it did for myself. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "First, I am going to help you find your father. Then I am going to have a long overdue conversation with my wife about honesty in marriage." We spent the next 3 hours at my laptop searching through public records, social media, and online directories. Richard proved surprisingly adept at digital detective work, and together we traced a path through my father's life over the past 20 years. His name was Marcus Holloway, and he was not at all what my mother had led me to believe. "Look at this," Richard said, pointing to a LinkedIn profile. "He is a project manager for a nonprofit that builds affordable housing. Has been for 15 years. I stared at the professional photo of a man who looked remarkably like me. Same dark eyes, same stubborn chin. His bio mentioned his work with Habitat for Humanity, his volunteer coaching for youth soccer, and his passion for environmental conservation. He does not look like someone who abandoned his family because he could not handle responsibility," I murmured. "No," Richard agreed grimly. "He does not." We found more pieces of his life scattered across the internet. A Facebook page filled with pictures of hiking trips and community service projects. A local newspaper article about his volunteer work at a literacy center. A mention in his company newsletter about his mentorship of young professionals. Serafina, Richard said quietly, "Look at this." He had found a cached version of an old blog post dated about 5 years ago. The title was, living with regret, a father's letter to the daughter he cannot reach. My hands trembled as I clicked to read it. To my daughter, wherever you are, it began. Today you turned 30, and I wonder if you know that I think about you every single day. I wonder if you know that not a birthday passes without me buying you a gift that sits unopened in my closet, hope against hope that someday I might be able to give it to you. I made mistakes in my marriage to your mother. I was young, I traveled too much for work. I did not always put my family first, but I never stopped loving you. I never wanted to lose you. The settlement your mother proposed seemed temporary at the time, a cooling-off period while emotions settled. I never imagined it would become a permanent exile. I hope you are happy. I hope you are loved. I hope someday you might want to know the father who never forgot you. I was crying before I finished reading Richard's strong hand on my shoulder as my body shook with 20 years of suppressed grief. The money, I whispered. She has been paying him to honor a settlement agreement not to stay away by choice. It looks that way. I wiped my eyes and reached for my phone. I am calling him. Are you sure you are ready? I looked around my apartment, at Maya's birthday decorations, at the remnants of the life I had built, believing I was fundamentally unworthy of a father's love at Richard who had loved me. Anyway, I am tired of living in the story my mother wrote for me, I said. It is time to write my own. The phone rang 3 times before a voice answered, tentative, cautious. Hello, is this Marcus Holloway? Yes, this is Marcus. I took a deep breath that felt like the first real breath I had taken in 20 years. This is Serafina. I am your daughter. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard a sound that might have been sobbing or laughing or both. Serafina, my God, is it really you? It is really me, Dad. Dad. He repeated the word like a prayer. I never thought. I hoped, but I never really believed. I just learned the truth today. About the payments, about the settlement. I thought you had abandoned me. Never. His voice was fierce with conviction. Not for one single day did I ever abandon you in my heart. I have been waiting 35 years for this phone call. We talked for 2 hours. He told me about the custody battle that never really was, about the mediation sessions where my mother's lawyer had painted him as an unfit father who cared more about his career than his family. He told me about the settlement he had agreed to, temporary financial support in exchange for giving my mother primary custody while they worked things out. He told me about the years of trying to contact me through my mother, the letters that were returned, unopened, the Christmas gifts that were sent back. He told me about hiring a private investigator when I turned 18, only to learn that my mother had convinced me he wanted no contact. And he told me about the monthly payments that had started as child support and gradually transformed into something else entirely. Hush money to keep him from disrupting the new life my mother had built. I could have stopped paying years ago, he said. Could have fought it in court. But she convinced me you were happy that you had a good stepfather, that reaching out would only hurt you. She said you hated me for leaving. I did hate you, I admitted. But I hated someone who never existed. When I finally hung up, Richard was sitting at my table with 2 cups of coffee and a box of tissues. How do you feel? He asked. I considered the question carefully. Angry, sad, relieved, terrified. I looked at him, but also hopeful for the first time in a long time. He sounds like a good man. He does. I sipped my coffee, thinking. Richard, what happens to you and Mom now? He was quiet for a long moment. I do not know, sweetheart. 30 years of marriage is not something you throw away lightly. But 30 years of lies is not something you easily forgive either. Maya wandered into the kitchen, then still in her birthday dress but with chocolate frosting somehow smeared on her cheek. Mommy, why were you crying and who were you talking to for so long? I pulled her onto my lap, breathing in the sweet smell of her hair. I was talking to your grandfather, baby. Your other grandfather. I have another grandfather. You do. And I think you are going to like him very much. Before this incredible story gets even more intense, I need to know, are you feeling this family drama as much as I am? The lies, the manipulation, the 20 years of stolen relationship? Drop a comment and let me know what you would you have done if you discovered your mother had been paying your father to stay away from you. Would you forgive that level of betrayal? And please hit that like button if you are invested in seeing how this family revenge story plays out, because trust me, we are just getting to the good part where justice finally starts to be served. 3 weeks after that life-changing phone call, I had a plan. Not a revenge plan born of anger, but something far more powerful, a truth plan born of clarity. My father Marcus and I had spoken every day, slowly rebuilding a relationship that should have never been broken. Richard had moved into his brother's spare room while he and my mother attended marriage counseling, and I had discovered something that changed everything. The final piece fell into place when Marcus sent me copies of documents he had kept all these years, including bank records showing that my mother had been depositing his monthly payments into a separate account. An account that, according to Richard's careful investigation of their shared finances, she had never disclosed to him. But the real kicker, she had been claiming those deposits as freelance consulting income on their joint tax returns. Tax fraud, Richard said grimly, when I showed him the documents. She has been committing tax fraud for 20 years, using money extorted from your father to fund her lifestyle, while lying to the IRS about the source. That is when I knew exactly how to handle my mother's decades of manipulation. I invited the whole family to Maya's delayed birthday celebration, the real party I called it. Daniel and his wife Sarah, Richard, my mother, and as a surprise guest, Marcus. I told everyone except my mother about the additional attendee. The morning of the party, I felt calmer than I had in weeks. Maya was excited about meeting her grandfather, though she did not fully understand the complexity of the situation. Marcus had driven 8 hours to be here, carrying 20 years of wrapped birthday and Christmas presents in his truck. When Daniel arrived with Sarah, I pulled him aside first. My brother and I had never been particularly close. My mother's obvious favoritism had driven a wedge between us years ago, but he deserved to know what was coming. Danny, I need to tell you something before everyone else gets here. 20 minutes later, my brother sat in stunned silence. Sarah held his hand while he processed the revelation that our mother had been lying to our entire family for decades. The money Dad gives her every month for her shopping and personal expenses, Daniel said slowly, that is Dad's own money being recycled back to him. Plus, whatever she has been skimming off the top, I confirmed. This explains so much, Sarah murmured. The way she always seemed to have extra cash, the expensive gifts she would buy herself, the mysterious inheritance from her aunt that never quite made sense. Daniel's face was red now, his engineer's mind working through the financial implications. Do you know how many times I have felt guilty about being the successful child? How many times I have watched her criticize you while secretly knowing I could never handle what you have been through? She played us against each other, deliberately, I said. Kept us both insecure and competing for her approval, while she maintained complete control. When Richard arrived, the three of them formed an unlikely alliance. Sarah, who had always felt unwelcome in our family despite her genuine kindness. Richard, who was facing the collapse of his 30-year marriage built on lies, and Daniel, who was realizing he had been complicit in years of emotional abuse toward his sister. My mother arrived fashionably late as always, sweeping in with an armload of expensive gifts for Maya, and an outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Goodness, what a crowd, she exclaimed, kissing Maya's cheek. This is quite the production for a child's birthday party. That is when Marcus walked out of my kitchen carrying Maya's birthday cake. The color drained from my mother's face so completely I thought she might faint. She grabbed the back of my couch for support, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Hello, Evelyn, Marcus said quietly. You look well. Maya bounced over to him immediately. Grandpa Marcus, can we do the cake now? In just a minute, sweetheart, he said, his eyes never leaving my mother's face. I think your grandmother and I need to have a conversation first. What is he doing here? Mom's voice came out as a whisper. He is here because he is Maya's grandfather, I said calmly. And because it is time everyone in this family knew the truth. What followed was the most uncomfortable hour of my life, but also the most liberating. With Daniel and Richard as witnesses, I laid out everything: the payments, the lies, the tax fraud, the emotional manipulation. I showed them bank records, legal documents, and the blog post where my father had poured out his heart about losing his daughter. My mother tried every tactic in her playbook. She cried, claiming she had done everything out of love. She raged, accusing Marcus of manipulating me against her. She threatened, saying I would regret destroying our family over ancient history. She bargained, promising to make things right if we could just handle this privately. But the evidence was overwhelming, and more importantly, her audience was no longer under her spell. Evelyn, Richard said, finally, his voice heavy with disappointment. I need you to leave. Richard, please, if you would just let me explain. You have had 20 years to explain. You chose lies instead. He stood up, every inch of his 62 years showing in his posture. I will be filing for divorce next week. And separation of assets. I think a forensic accountant is going to be very interested in that secret bank account. Daniel had been quiet through most of the confrontation, but now he stood as well. Mom, I am done. Sarah and I are done. We will not be bringing our children around someone who manipulates and lies as easily as breathing. You cannot do this to me. Her mask finally slipped, completely revealing the rage underneath. I gave you everything. I sacrificed everything for this family. No, I said, standing with my father's hand on my shoulder and my daughter playing quietly in the corner, oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around her. You sacrificed us for your need to control everything. There is a difference. The aftermath of that confrontation was swift and devastating. For my mother, within a week, Richard had filed for divorce and moved back into their family home, while my mother was served papers requiring her to vacate. The forensic accountant he hired discovered not only the secret account, but also credit cards in Richard's name that she had been using to fund her lifestyle, while claiming they needed to tighten their belts. Daniel and Sarah cut all contact, refusing to let their 2 young children visit their grandmother until she got professional help for what they now recognized as pathological lying and manipulation. The golden child had finally seen behind the curtain, and he was horrified by what he found. But the real justice came from an unexpected source. My mother had always been proud of her position on the board of a local charity, a nonprofit that helped single mothers get back on their feet. It was her passion project. She would tell people her way of giving back to the community. What she had not counted on was that Marcus, in his 20 years of rebuilding his life, had become heavily involved in nonprofit work himself. When he mentioned my mother's charity work during one of our daily phone calls, something clicked into place. Dad, what is the name of your current employer again? Beacon Housing Initiative. We work with families transitioning out of homelessness. Why, I felt a chill run down my spine. Mom's charity, the one she sits on the board for. It is called New Beginnings Foundation. They work with single mothers. There was silence on the other end of the line. Serafina Beacon Housing Initiative has been trying to get a partnership with New Beginnings Foundation for 3 years. Every proposal we have submitted has been mysteriously rejected despite our excellent track record and the fact that our missions align perfectly. The pieces fell together with sickening clarity. My mother had been sitting on a board that could have helped hundreds of families like the one I had been, single mothers struggling to make ends meet. And she had been sabotaging partnerships that might have actually made a difference. Why? Because approving a partnership with Marcus's organization would have meant acknowledging his existence, his success, his worth as a human being. She would rather let families suffer than admit she had been wrong about the man she had spent 20 years demonizing. I shared this information with Richard, who passed it along to his lawyer. What we discovered through legal discovery was even worse. My mother had been embezzling small amounts from the charity for years, covering it up by rejecting grant applications and partnerships that would have required detailed financial audits. The scandal broke in the local newspaper. 3 weeks later, prominent charity board member arrested for embezzlement and tax fraud. The article detailed not only her theft from the nonprofit, but also the tax fraud involving unreported income and the elaborate deception that had torn apart multiple families. I felt no satisfaction reading it, no sense of victory or vindication, just a deep sadness for all the people she had hurt in her desperate need to control every narrative in her life. Maya, resilient as children, are adapted to the changes in our family structure with remarkable grace. She loved her new grandfather Marcus, who turned out to be everything my mother had claimed he was not: patient, reliable, emotionally present, and completely devoted to his granddaughter. When I worried about the impact of all the family drama on her development, Marcus reminded me of something profound. Children are incredibly resilient when they are told the truth in age-appropriate ways, he said during one of his weekend visits. What damages them is living in a house of lies even when they do not consciously understand what they are sensing. He was right. Maya seemed happier and more secure, knowing that the adults in her life were being honest with each other, even when those truths were complicated. Richard thrived in ways that surprised everyone. Free from my mother's constant criticism and manipulation, he rediscovered parts of himself that had been buried under decades of walking on eggshells. He started dating a widow named Janet from his community college art class, and for the first time in years I saw him laugh without looking over his shoulder to gauge my mother's reaction. Daniel and I began rebuilding our relationship slowly. Without my mother playing us against each other, we discovered we actually liked each other quite a bit. Sarah became the sister I had never had, and their children became Maya's beloved cousins. But the most profound change was in myself. The constant anxiety I had carried for 35 years, the feeling that I was somehow fundamentally flawed or unlovable, began to dissolve. Having my father back in my life did not magically fix all my problems, but it filled a hole I had not even realized was there. You know what the strangest part is? I told my therapist during one of our sessions. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something terrible to happen because I chose truth over keeping the peace. And what has happened instead? I thought about Maya's laughter during our weekend adventures with Marcus, about Richard's lighter spirit and Daniel's newfound respect for the life I had built, about the sense of authenticity that now permeated all my relationships. Peace, I said with surprise. Real peace. Not the fake peace that comes from avoiding conflict, but actual peace that comes from living in reality instead of in someone else's carefully constructed fiction. My mother attempted to contact me several times during this period. Letters filled with apologies and explanations, voicemails that alternated between remorse and blame, even showing up at Maya's school once before being escorted away by security. But her apologies always came with conditions, explanations that were really excuses, and the underlying assumption that eventually everyone would get over it and return to the way things were. She seemed genuinely unable to comprehend that some betrayals are so fundamental they change the entire structure of a family, that some lies are so extensive they make future relationships impossible, that some manipulations are so damaging they require professional intervention before healing can even begin. The last communication I received from her was a letter that perfectly encapsulated everything that had been wrong with our relationship for 35 years. Serafina, I hope you are happy now that you have destroyed our family over your selfishness. All I ever did was love you and try to protect you, and this is how you repay me. When you realize what you have lost, I might consider forgiving you. Even in her supposed apology, she managed to make herself the victim and me the perpetrator. She took no responsibility for her actions and showed no understanding of their impact. It was a masterpiece of narcissistic manipulation, and for the first time in my life, I read it and felt nothing but pity. 2 years later, I stood in my father's backyard, watching Maya push her baby cousin on the swing set Marcus had built for his growing collection of grandchildren. Daniel and Sarah's youngest had been born 6 months ago, and watching my brother navigate fatherhood with the support of his actual father was healing something deep inside both of us. She never stops moving, does she? Marcus chuckled, settling into the lawn chair beside me with 2 glasses of lemonade. Never. Just like you, apparently, according to Aunt Helen. I had reconnected with my father's side of the family, discovering aunts, uncles, and cousins who had been wondering about me for decades. They welcomed me and Maya with open arms, sharing stories about my father that painted a picture completely opposite to my mother's narrative. "Your grandmother would have adored her," Marcus said softly, and I felt that familiar pang of grief for all the relationships my mother's lies had stolen from me. But it was a clean grief, now uncomplicated by confusion or self-blame. The legal proceedings had concluded 6 months ago. My mother pled guilty to tax fraud and embezzlement charges, receiving 2 years probation, community service, and an order to pay restitution to both the charity and the IRS. Richard's divorce was finalized with a settlement that left her with minimal assets given the fraud involved in their financial partnership. She was required to attend therapy as part of her plea agreement, and according to Daniel, who maintained minimal contact only to ensure she was not completely destitute, she was slowly beginning to acknowledge some responsibility for her actions. Whether that represented genuine change or simply another manipulation remained to be seen. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked Marcus, watching Maya's uninhibited joy. "Fighting for me when I was 15. Not just accepting Mom's terms and walking away completely." He considered the question seriously. "I regret that I did not fight harder. I regret that I let lawyers and mediators convince me that keeping the peace was more important than maintaining my relationship with my daughter. But regret fighting for you, never. Even though it cost you 20 years and probably $250,000, Serafina." He turned to face me fully. "Do you know what I bought with that money?" I shook my head. "I bought the hope that someday you might want to know me. I bought the knowledge that your mother could not claim I had abandoned my financial responsibilities. I bought the ability to sleep at night knowing I had not given up completely." His eyes filled with tears, "And ultimately I bought this moment. You, Maya, our family gathered together, worth every penny." Richard appeared around the corner of the house carrying a platter of hamburgers from the grill. At 64, he was happier than I had ever seen him. His relationship with Janet was serious but unhurried, built on mutual respect and honest communication. He had become the grandfather Maya deserved from the beginning, present, engaged, and completely authentic. "Food is ready," he announced, then caught sight of Maya on the swing. "Maya Bear, come wash your hands." "5 more minutes, Grandpa Richard. That is what you said 20 minutes ago, young lady." I watched the easy banter between them and marveled at how a family could be broken apart and rebuilt stronger. Not the same family we had been, but a better one. A chosen family based on love and honesty rather than blood and obligation. Daniel emerged from the house carrying his baby son with Sarah close behind. My brother had grown into himself over the past 2 years, no longer carrying the burden of being the golden child in a dysfunctional system. His marriage was stronger, his career was thriving, and most importantly, he was raising his children with the truth from the beginning. "Any word from Mom?" Sarah asked quietly, settling beside me while Daniel helped Maya down from the swing. "A birthday card last month. Generic message signed, 'Love Mother.' No acknowledgement of what happened, no real attempt at relationship building. Are you okay with that?" I considered the question. 2 years ago, receiving such a superficial gesture from my mother would have sent me spiraling into guilt and confusion. Now it felt like exactly what it was, a performative action designed to ease her own conscience rather than rebuild our relationship. "I am okay with it." I told her the terms for rebuilding our relationship: genuine accountability, sustained therapy, and proof of changed behavior over time. Until she is ready to meet those terms, cards and letters do not really mean anything. And if she never meets those terms, then I will be sad about that, but I will not let it destroy the life I have built. I spent 35 years trying to earn the love of someone who was incapable of giving it freely. I will not spend the rest of my life doing the same thing. As we gathered around the picnic table for lunch, I looked at the faces surrounding me. Marcus discovering the joy of being a grandfather without the pressure and fear that had marked his early fatherhood. Richard finally free to be himself without walking on eggshells. Daniel and Sarah building the kind of marriage based on honesty that neither of us had ever seen modeled. Maya, growing up surrounded by adults who respected her intelligence and told her age-appropriate truths about their family history. This was not the family I had been born into, but it was the family I had chosen to build from the ashes of my mother's deceptions. "Before we eat," Marcus said, raising his glass of lemonade, "I want to toast something." We all raised our glasses, even Maya, with her sippy cup. To second chances, to chosen family, and to the courage to choose truth over comfort. To chosen family, we echoed. As Maya giggled and Richard told a story about his art class adventures and Daniel debated baby sleep schedules with Sarah, I felt something I had never experienced before: the deep peace that comes from living authentically. The irony was not lost on me. My mother had spent decades trying to control her family's narrative, paying thousands of dollars and sacrificing countless relationships to maintain her version of reality. In the end, her desperate attempts to control the story had caused her to lose any meaningful role in it at all. Truth, it turned out, really was more powerful than manipulation. Love really was stronger when it was freely given, rather than extracted through guilt and obligation. And family really was about the people who showed up consistently with honesty and care, regardless of blood relations. Maya would grow up knowing all her grandparents' real stories, the good, the complicated, and the painful. She would understand that families can be broken and rebuilt, that forgiveness does not require accepting abuse, and that she has the power to choose her own path based on truth rather than fear. That felt like the sweetest revenge of all. So here is my question for all of you who have stuck with me through this incredible journey of family betrayal and ultimate justice. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted completely had been lying to you for years? How did you handle it? Was there ever a moment when you had to choose between keeping the peace and demanding the truth? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below, because I have learned that we are all more connected in our struggles than we realize. If this story of family karma and choosing authenticity over manipulation resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life stories about standing up for yourself and finding your chosen family, and share this with anyone who might need to hear that it is never too late to demand the truth. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and remember, the family that chooses you with full knowledge of who you really are will always be stronger than the family that loves you only as long as you play their games. Here is to building families based on truth, respect, and genuine love.